We don't have a voice in a hearing. Paid protesters are allowed to take the spaces of mothers and fathers that have been harmed by school closings. Taxpayers come from all over the United States, but we don't have the right to go to a Senate hearing to let a privatizer take over public education. Nobody talks to the people in our community. You express your opinions about our community, but nobody talks to us about what should happen to our schools. We are afraid of equity. It's an act of cowardice to run towards privatization and to run away from equity. We are as far away from Brown v. Board as we were in 1957. We deserve the right to have a say-so in what happens to our children.
We just found out moments ago that Betsy Devos was selected as Secretary of Education.
An advocate of school choice, she's often called an architect of Michigan's school system.
Never having been a teacher, she never attended or sent her children to public school.
Set to have her confirmation hearing before a Senate committee next week.
The showdown on Capitol Hill at this hour.
It is hard to imagine a candidate less qualified.
She'll be an excellent education secretary because she cares about children.
Without that one more vote, DeVos is headed for a tie.
If just one more opposes, her confirmation will fail.
People from Detroit are suffering because the trust that they've given to the system through their tax dollars has been betrayed. Detroit, we used to have 1.3 million people. Detroit is a city now of about 775,000 people. 80% of the charter schools in Michigan are for-profit charter schools. 50% of the charter schools that have been advocated for, funded by Betsy Devos, are amongst the worst schools in the United States. We have some of the most corrupt charter school operators in the country. Schools have opened and closed within a matter of weeks.
What do we want? Dr. Bo! When do we want it? Now! If we don't get it, shut it down! We don't get it, shut it down! We don't get it!
My name is G2 Brown from Chicago, Illinois. I'm the National Director for the Journey for Justice Alliance. Journey for Justice is a national network of over 40 grassroots community-based organizations in 24 cities and also in Johannesburg, South Africa.
When do we want it? Now! When do we want it?
Dedicated to community-driven school improvement and fighting for education equity in the United States.
Don't get it, shut it down! We don't get it, shut it down!
To this day, we still do not truly know why this school was closed. So this is Oakman. This is the school that they closed in 2013. The building was built in 1927, specifically for special needs students, which means, auditorium was accessible, bathrooms were accessible. I'll go around the block. Gardens were accessible. We had a garden. It was really nowhere in that building children couldn't go, whether they had a walker or a wheelchair. And so...
Should all schools that receive
if
taxpayer funding be required to meet the requirements of the individuals with disabilities in education?
I think that is a matter that's best left to the states.
So some states might be good to kids with disabilities and other states might not be so good, and then what, people could just move around the country if they don't like how their kids are being treated?
I think that's an issue that's best left to the states.
What about the federal requirement? It's a federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Let's limit it to federal funding. If schools receive federal funding.
So this is McKenzie. This is one of the schools that was tore down by Robert Bobb, one of the emergency managers, and rebuilt. And initially, McKenzie was a high school. And then it turned from a high school to a K through 8. And now McKenzie is fully populated, and the last time I checked, earlier part of this school year, it had a waiting list. And that's just the thing, you close all these schools in the area and then they become overly populated because they have children that are being bused in from other communities that their schools were closed. So now even some of these kids that may be walking range to the school, they may be on the waiting list because it's full. But it doesn't really leave you too many options when you have empty buildings in your neighborhood, and you know in your heart that they shouldn't be empty, but you have to make choices.
I support accountability.
Equal accountability for all schools that receive federal funding.
I support accountability.
Okay, is that a yes or a no?
I support accountability.
Do you not want to answer my question?
I support accountability.
Okay, let me ask you this. I think all schools that receive taxpayer funding should be equally accountable. Do you agree with me or not?
Well, they don't. They're not today.
But I think they should. Do you agree with me or not?
Well, no, because...
You don't agree with me. Let me move to my next question.
It is Monday, Martin Luther King Day. And that is very important because, as we all know, Martin Luther King stood for equality, justice, and just the fair way of life. And it's important to try to implement that in our everyday lives and continue to share his message with our kids.
My name is Helen Moore. I'm an activist for our children, especially in Detroit, but all over the place. I've been working with children since I was 13 years old. I raised a lot of children, probably thousands that are really making a mark in this world. And what we need to do is think about all the children. And I believe that when we do that and show them that we care about them and they know it, that's what they need, a lot of love and a lot of attention. So that's what we've been doing over the years, many of our people.
Everybody at this table has been an activist. We've all been involved. We all are in the same circle. We have researchers. We have folks with doctorate degree. I have a law degree. We have parents that have children in the public schools, and we're all working together to try to make things better for our school. But the interference comes in when people like Betsy Devos with all this money, instead of getting out of our way, go create your own schools. If you love education so much, you got enough money. Do your own thing and get the hell out of our children's lives. We know how to educate them. They've been misused and done everything to, so we're going to DC tonight and we're going to tell the nation that our children are brilliant, our children are smart, and they need the best education they can get. And as the children's chant goes, no education, no life.
You know, when they took us over in 1999, which they never should have done because we had a $93 million surplus, our test scores were at the state midpoint and rising, and we were doing just fine. I mean, but they were looking at a $1.5 billion bond that we had passed a few years earlier. They were looking at that with hungry eyes. They took us over because they could. And now here we are, you know, a decade and a half later, the state has taken us over. They've completely ruined the school district. The test scores are the worst in the country. And we are billions of dollars in debt. Whereas when they took us over, you know, we were doing just fine.
23 years of being an educator in Detroit, let me see the extreme drop that has become the DPS system in services and abilities and achievement, not just in the students, but also the teachers and the staff. They keep hollering about money. Which is more important? I'm gonna ask you, which is more important? The money in the school system or the children in the school system?
Michigan, for instance, as you note, has the nation's largest share of for-profits. For-profit companies in any line of work worry us for a couple of reasons. One, they have every incentive to cut corners in order to increase kind of return to, you know, whoever owns it. And two, they actually want to attract customers, so they may misrepresent themselves. That's true. Flip side of those two concerns is actually the reasons that I generally feel optimistic about the role of for-profits. One, the reason they actually try to cut corners is because they worry about profitability. One of the problems with nonprofits and public entities is they have little or no incentive to cut costs. Teach for America, I love Teach for America. They cost $10,000 per recruit 25 years ago. They're much larger than they used to be. Their cost per recruit is 500% what it was when they were started out. Usually costs go down, but TFA as a nonprofit's never had any incentive to squeeze its cost structure. Same, I would argue, is true of most of your nonprofit charters and the rest. So part of the promise for me of for-profit charters is that they actually have real incentives to help us rethink the cost structure in schooling. Question is, can you actually make that size an impact on a state with millions of kids using that model? It's unclear.
We have to make it by 10 o'clock tomorrow for the press conference, okay? And why are we here? Somebody tell, why are we here? Why are we going?
I'm Betsy Devos.
Yes, that's the main reason. We have to try to stop her from being appointed over education. So that's what we're doing. We're gonna sleep on the bus. Now, we've done this a million times before. It is not going to be easy because when we get there, we're doing press conferences, lobbying, talking to everybody, so you must go to sleep. We gotta go till 5 o'clock before she's vetted, and we got all kind of meetings in between. So when we get off the bus driver's gonna go back to the hotel. Y'all can't go back to the hotel. This is civil rights. We fighting for our children.
We're gonna get this.
Any thoughts?
Yes, I can't wait. I think this time I wish we had 9 more buses, but we must magnify from a small concentrated bus to make sure we get our message across.
Okay, Victor.
Betsy Devos, we ready?
We're gonna go.
All right, let's lock and load.
Y'all know that. And I snore, so don't get mad. We're on our way with all the good little activists and the children from Detroit. Teachers, community people, parents. We're all on this trip together.
If the United States Constitution is correct, equal justice under the law, she cannot just keep discriminating against us. Now everybody's in the same pot, and they will have to experience what we experience. Getting ready to address the congressional group and to have a press conference. Took us long enough to get here.
Please move to your right for me, everybody. Sir, get rid of this.
You can't use this?
No, not to take a picture of this.
Okay.
Sincerely thank all of you all for making this journey. Thank you for believing that you can make a difference.
So the line for the Devos hearing right now, as of about a half an hour ago, it already included 38 people. Security said that they'll start letting folks in around 4:30, but they'll cut the line after the first 25 to 30 and direct the rest to an overflow room. And then once the hearing starts, they're going to do a 1 in, 1 out kind of thing to get people in and out.
So we need to get over there as soon as we just
Yeah. Yeah.
This is foolishness. This is what you call staged America. This is staged America. This is scripted America.
What do you mean?
Nowhere in the world you're going to
sit there and have a Senate hearing to such a degree where the open public, the really concerned public who traveled hard to get here, is not being allowed because you had paid homeless people to hold spots until they get in. That doesn't, I mean, that's not America. Yes.
Which homeless people?
Most of them around on the end, just around that bend. They were, man, come on, let me see. I couldn't believe it, but this is crazy. And they're mean. But when our children grow up, when black children grow up, they're going to have to pay for all this. They have to pay for this foolishness. They're just holding spots. And just waiting to get paid. As soon as they get paid, they get to go out. They get to leave. And they don't see nothing wrong with that.
What's going on?
If we've never seen anything in our lifetime like what's happening here, we would never know how they play the game. They have two lines, one here and one down there, and they're letting people come in and they're keeping us out so that we won't be able to. What's the matter? Can't walk the hallway. Okay, I'm real small. And I don't see no 400-pound people coming past me. But anyway, this is the kind of thing that our forefathers went through. Talking about democracy. They staged this whole thing, paying people to be in line so that we can't get into the office where they're having the hearing.
How do you know they've paid people?
Well, they told us. The people that are in line, some of them are out on the street, they actually have told us, and they said they're not really with these folks. They don't really know what's happening, but they need the money. And it's been verified.
Can you
talk
introduce me to one of the people who've spoken with?
You see all these folks around here? I don't know which one.
Walk up and just have them say that to the
There's a guy, I don't know. Who wants to talk with the camera about how much you're getting paid for standing in line? Who wants to talk to our camera? Who wants to be on camera? Just be quiet, I know what I'm doing. Who wants to talk about how they're paying you to stand in the line against your own children and all your own children's education?
Are y'all paying?
Oh, you already have been told.
Are y'all paying?
No, are we paying? We ain't paying.
You want more money?
You can't pay for.
You
can't pay for democracy. You can't pay for our children's education. The real line is around there, and they're putting people.
They're putting children in line.
And they're putting people in place. And I've talked to the people that are here. They don't know why they're here, but they're just getting the money.
Yeah.
And that's how Betsy Devos has.
Yes, ma'am. Let's step. Come on. Let's step. Mama. Just step with me. Step with me. We're gonna move on this time. It's okay. It's okay.
Well, it might be okay, but our children are not being treated right, and neither are we.
Nope.
We want our children to be educated, and she's not going to do it. They're going to end up in prison, and some of you are going to suffer for it. The very ones that's trying to stop us. When they don't get educated in school, they go to prison. They kill each other. Please. They do all that. Please. I'm too emotional.
We're not in the middle. Oh, sure. We're to the side. We're to the side.
Thank you. Take a deep breath. They made sure the bombs are gone.
No, this is the third first of one. You see that the other one was white. Black was white. Yep. That whole line was white 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, they let some go in there
Most
too.
people just came off the elevator 10 minutes
And the
ago.
white people all walked, all the staffers walked off?
No, they handpicked and put those people in the line and let the other people go.
Yeah, because that's what they say. We jack this money. We're out of here. We jack this money. And we're leaving.
They put that very well curated
Well,
black people.
$35 worth my children. That was a $17,000 line. That was for all the people. That was $17,000 line. If they were here from 7:30 in the morning till 5, it's a $17,000 line.
Okay, we got some lady told me she's getting $12.
That is the biggest. We have pictures of the line all day. 30 minutes ago, that was all white people. Look at it. These people want right. Straight off. box for the people who've been waiting. Instead of Detroit family, they're going in.
You sold my children education for $35. It better be worth. It better be worth.
All right, I'm on my way down here.
It better be worth.
Who told you that?
It better be worth.
Who told you that?
I just said. It better be worth.
It's $110.
Okay.
What did the man say?
100, and he said, no, correct yourself. It wasn't $35, it's $110. So you sold my kids' education out for $110.
That's what he said. I'm a witness.
Say it.
He actually said that.
Just say it.
I swear, if I hadn't lived through this, I wouldn't believe it. I would not believe that people are that desperate that they would sell their own children education down the drain for $110.
Oh, she's coming down.
I think they're going to bail in. Hey, Johnny, hand me my printer. He's going to Thank you so much. Anybody got to take your thing?
We don't have a voice in the hearing. Paid protesters are allowed to take the spaces of mothers and fathers that have been harmed by school closings. Taxpayers come from all over the United States, but we don't have the right to go to a Senate hearing to let a privatizer take over public education. Nobody talks to the people in our community. You express your opinions about our community, but nobody talks to us about what should happen to our schools. We are afraid of equity. It's an act of cowardice to run towards privatization and to run away from equity. We are as far away from Brown v. Board as we were in 1957. We deserve the right to have a say-so in what happens to our children. Take it personal, the inequities that exist in this school system, and how we have a help committee. None of them have talked to the parents in Detroit. Did you know that in Detroit there was an improving education system? There were 4 straight years of test score improvement, and then they invented an education crisis. And the first thing they took was the right of those parents to vote for their elected school board. How many of you in this room can vote for your school board? Raise your hand. How many of you in this room can vote for your school board? The first thing they do is snatch away our right to vote. Then they say, we're going to change who manages the building. We're not going to deal with the questions of inequity. How can we be comfortable with a grandmother sitting there telling you there were 53 children in her kindergarten class? At the same school, children that need special ed are getting their services under the stairs, eating lunch in the gym room. Shame on this country. Shame on us. We are guilty of inertia. And so what we have to do is get arrested. We have to do hunger strikes. I was one of those hunger strikers that had to save Diet High School. On the 25th day of our hunger strike, Mayor Rahm Emanuel went to Lincoln Elementary, gave them a $21 million annex, an already wealthy school. To hell with those black children in Washington Park. This ain't no race card. We afraid of race. We afraid of it. And since we're afraid of it, we don't change anything. And so we have to be under armed guard just because we want our voices heard. Nobody's here trying to do anything wrong. Every person usually, this brother's a retired educator, dedicated his life to children. But we have to act like we're criminals. We're being criminalized while they got paid protesters out there. But we're being criminalized. This is what America really is. So all of the illusions of a post-racial society, you better get over that. Despite this great gray in my beard, I got an 8-year-old. I'm terrified for him. I'm terrified for him.
This is your second warning.
We were told that we can speak. We were told that we can speak.
You're not holding signs in the building.
Okay.
Take down the sign.
Yes, ma'am.
And if you walk with that sign throughout this building,
yes,
you
ma'am,
will be arrested, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
I know you guys said you don't want to be arrested. We're not trying to arrest you, but you're doing everything in order for us to arrest you, okay?
What
have you learned about the failures of the Detroit public schools and Detroit charter schools that has informed your decision-making as the Secretary of Education? What went wrong there that's going to go right in cities all across America as a result of your philosophy about how we ought to move the country forward?
Actually, I believe that there's a lot that has gone right in Detroit and in Michigan with regard to charter schools. And the notion that there hasn't been accountability is just wrong. It's a faulty, it's false news. It's not correct.
That's why the work in our neighborhoods is so important, because this space is corrupted. So, you know. The struggle continues, but there is a struggle. This ain't David versus Goliath. This is a fight. You don't go to an action and expect the Red Sea to part. You go to an action to land a blow. Right? Then you come back and you figure out how you come back next time. So we landed a blow. We are believers. And so we have to spread that gospel around the country. I have a son. I can't look my son in the eye and know that he has no power, that he don't have the right to control what happens in his neighborhood. So my son sees a man that is not far from perfect, but does his best to make sure that we have self-determination. So that has to be the core essence of our education movement moving forward. We can't make the mistake that our brothers and sisters made in the civil rights movement. And that mistake was to believe that through legislation, we can transform a country that has never been held accountable for its hatred. Accountability breeds transformation. There has to be a will for transformation. So for white America that does not believe in that, they have to become warriors against racism in their own communities, right? If not, then we will always deal with this. We will always put a Band-Aid over a bullet wound instead of dealing with the core issue. So the fight today is a fight for justice, but like I said, a fight that must be grounded in self-determination.
And the nomination is confirmed. Never before has a vice president been called upon to cast a tie-breaking vote for a cabinet nominee. When I cast my first vote in the United States Senate, though, I wasn't just voting for you. Having seen your devotion to improving the quality of education for some of our most vulnerable children across the nation for so many years, I was also casting a vote for America's children. And I can tell you, my vote for
No
Betsy
education, no life for Black people. It's the truth. Think about it. Letting them know that we don't like her appointment and we know what she's about, that's great. But if we can get to the masses and let them know that what we're doing is for the benefit of all children, white, Black, Latinos, Native Americans, if we can let them know that we're not fighting them, we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. When they learn our history and we learn theirs, we're going to all find out that we're great and our children are great. So that's what we're looking for, a new day. So you can't stop us. There's always going to be somebody there that's going to keep the struggle continuing. Until our children are free and get the education they deserve, we will never stop.